Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Mark Bergen. The 2025 college football season kicks off in a matter of days, and with it comes some big storylines for the Triangle football teams. It includes the start of Chapel Bill. The Bill Belichick era gets underway in Chapel Hill. It also includes transfer quarterback Darian Mensah making a reported $8 million in the next 2 seasons at Duke. Also, quarterback CJ Bailey returns for his sophomore season as head coach Dave Doeren enters his 13th season as head coach of the NC State Wolfpack. I spoke with WRAL Sports executive producer Pat Welter about the top storylines for the Triangle teams in advance of the 2025 football season. Here with WRAL Sports executive producer Pat Welter, Mark Bergen. It's double duty, WRAL Triangle 2 and the WRAL Daily Download. Pat, football season is days away. And the 3 Triangle teams, UNC, Duke, NC State, a ton of storylines. So I thought, what better way to preview the season than to do a draft of the top storylines in advance of the 2025 season?
Hey, man, I'm getting ready for my fantasy football draft with my college buddies. I'm making rankings. I got spreadsheets. Why not apply the same logic to college football? I'm all in.
Absolutely. You're the guest of honor, Pat. So I'm going to give you the very first pick of the 3 Triangle teams. I'd imagine the conversation starts with Bill Belichick, but the first pick is yours, the top storyline going into the 2025 season.
Yeah, I think this is an example of an obvious first pick. How it plays out is the question, right? Will it work with Bill Belichick? Will he win football games? He's won the offseason. We've seen that. Like, they are the number one storyline in all of college football. You know, Ohio State, we don't know who their quarterback is, the defending champ. Alabama, Nick Saban's 2 years removed. How are they going to bounce back? Texas, Arch Manning. Small potatoes compared to one of, if not the greatest NFL coaches of all time, coming to Chapel Hill, trying to prove that not only can he still coach, because there were some question marks about him at the end with Patriots, but can he coach in college? It's one of the biggest storylines in the sport, and certainly our biggest storyline here in the Triangle.
So when you were in Charlotte for the ACC kickoff event, how much more attention did Bill Belichick get while he was there compared to some of the other coaches and players that were at the event?
It was entirely different. Now, this is my 4th year covering this event, so it's not like I've been doing it, for decades. But my understanding, he's one of, if not the only coaches to not do Radio Row, which was partly because of the circus that would ensue if he did, and probably all these podcasts and radio hosts around the country trying to trap him into going viral. So, in a way, I can't really blame the PR staff. But yeah, man, it was wholly different. Like, there was more security. There were so many one-on-one requests locally that we got a private invitation-only media session with Bill Belichick about like 9 a.m. before the day had really even started. And then it kind of just became, he took over, right? Like, you're supposed to be in the room for Dave Doeren's big podium moment, and everyone's just getting in line in the room next door for what's called the breakout room, which is like a secondary interview where you can ask even more questions, and there was every camera available there. And not everyone there is covering Bill Belichick. They're covering Clemson. They're covering Florida State, et cetera, et cetera. And anyone and everyone just had to be there to get the footage to see what was said.
The stakes are huge. I mean, it's UNC's commitment to go all in, to keep up with the Joneses, not just in the ACC, but I think keeping up with the SEC, the top dogs in the Big Ten as well. And I think we're going to look back on this of a few things. For this current season, UNC hasn't won a conference title since 1980. Can he help guide the Tar Heels back there maybe this season, maybe future seasons? We'll get into that in a second. Or, I mean, we can't be remiss of the fact of that CBS This Morning interview with his 24-year-old girlfriend, Jordon Hudson, and was that the start of when things started to go awry with this? How this plays out, we're going to look back on this of, was that a sign of things to come, or is that just something that just so happened in the offseason? We're laughing about it months later if UNC has on-field success. Those are the stakes there.
No, I mean, and I feel like we could go down this draft right now and just like select Bill Belichick storyline A, B, C, and D. I mean, I guess I'll give you an opportunity to make your second pick before I just start blowing all the way through them.
No, I think one other thing you have to say about Belichick, UNC's paying him an average of $10 million per year through 2029. How many seasons he coaches at UNC? So, like, he's here for the time being, but keep in mind, his buyout, if he chooses to leave UNC, only $1 million at this point. It was $10 million before June 1. So it's just things to keep an eye on as this season plays out. But, on field too, UNC TCU, that Labor Day night at Keenan Memorial. It's going to be huge, primetime game too, and that's going to be your first litmus test. In those first 4 games, to me, those are huge because you go into those 4 games and then what is UNC's record going into week 5 against Clemson, where traditionally Clemson's been one of the top dogs in the conference year in and year out if you look at, say, the last 10, 20 years in the ACC.
I think the question I keep asking myself more and more is how long is he going to stick around, to some of your points there about the buyout and whatnot. And he stuck around this long. Like he's coached in week 1. And that was a box check that we weren't sure was ultimately going to happen a few months ago. And it's not like I'm saying this with like any inside knowledge. I'm just kind of reading the writing on the wall. It seems to me that there's going to be an opportunity for Bill in the NFL next year if this stays on the tracks at all. Like, he's not going to need to go to the college football playoff for an NFL team to look around that's, how many teams in the NFL are there that are just desperate for the same kind of attention, relevancy, competency? You're telling me like a downtrodden franchise, like I guess I don't want to put franchises through the mud, but like the Cleveland Browns, place that Belichick has a history, the Arizona Cardinals, like some of these teams that are the Miami Dolphins that are just trying to find their way back aren't going to be looking at Bill Belichick if he shows a degree of competency at Carolina. So the question comes down to is like, how much does he actually like college? How much does he still want to stick it to all those NFL owners that didn't hire him this previous cycle? And how much does he want to set up his son, potentially Stephen Belichick, for a potential inheritance situation? Not that is like what's been set in stone here, but it's hard not to acknowledge that it could be a possibility that Stephen Belichick could inherit this down the line.
I would think that UNC would be a heck of a lot stronger defensively, the discipline, not beating yourself. Yep. And what I'm talking about, and I don't mean to shortchange Mac Brown's contributions to this program, and I promise you we'll get into some other picks here. Yeah. One last thought is this, is North Carolina is ranked bottom half in the FBS in scoring defense, total defense, and penalties in each of the last 4 seasons. I don't envision you'll have those same issues with a team that is coached by Bill Belichick for the 2025 season. I expect those things to be improved upon tenfold this season for the North Carolina Tar Heels.
I agree with you. At a minimum, like they aren't going to go to Boston College and get blown out and embarrassed. Yeah. They aren't going to lose to James Madison giving up 70 points. They ultimately might end in the same result. Like they might land at 8-4 with a trip to the Mayo Bowl, which is like Groundhog Day all over again for Carolina fans. But I think you're going to be prouder of that 8-4. I think it's going to be not as maybe empty calories as some of what it was with Mac Brown.
Certainly a ton of excitement with Belichick. I'll go to my next, to my pick, my very first pick. I'm going to go to Duke, which the best team in the state a year ago.
There you go.
Getting votes in the coaches poll, the AP preseason poll, only team in North Carolina to do that. And I go to Duke in specifically the quarterback position. Darian Mensah is going to make a reported $8 million over the next 2 seasons with Duke. And I just feel like we're not talking nearly enough about this of how he performs year 2 of Manny Diaz. But $8 million when you're talking the NIL era, Patrick Welter. We're talking about among the highest paid players in the NIL era. Duke has one in the quarterback Darian Mensah and how he's able to translate that to on-field success. Don't forget, too, he's playing his former team on September the 13th when Duke takes on Tulane as well. So I'm keeping an eye on this just because I see that $8 million.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having millions of dollars walking around on a college campus? But that's the cost of doing business in college football in 2025.
I can tell you I saw Darian Mensah walking around ACC kickoff with some very fine clothing and a handbag. I have not quite graduated to designer handbag levels myself. So props to Mensah for the style choice. Just a really smooth kid, the way he conducts himself, the way he talks, the way he interacts with other people. I've been impressed by that. And he plays football the same way. And one of the most under-discussed storylines is the investment that Duke has made into football. Like we all know about their basketball program and everything that they have done and what they have built and how they've kind of really capitalized in this modern college sports landscape. Nina King is trying to do the same thing in football. Now, they're a private institution. Our access to their records and finances and sources are not as readily available as they are with NC State and UNC. But to your point there, that reported figure about Mensah's salary, I happen to know one of his agents from a prior story, and I texted him after that. He didn't confirm that number, but he didn't deny it either. And that's a lot of money. And you think about, this is a team that hired Mike Elko, who brought the program back to relevancy. They lose him, and you're like, oh, well, where are they going to go from here? Well, they bring in another top coach in Manny Diaz, and I guess probably another draftable storyline would be how long is Manny Diaz going to stick around? But I think Duke's certainly going to try to keep him. They're going to try. They're going to try to give him a number that he can't refuse if he's successful again. You could argue he could have been one and done with a 9-win season his first year. Certainly, is this a guy that could go back to Miami, where he's from? If Cristobal doesn't
you just broke my brain a little bit, Pat.
I
could see it though. Yeah, I could see it
right?
though.
Or any number of those type level of programs that are going to be looking per coach.
Coming off a 9-win season, Mensah replacing Malik Murphy. Malik Murphy transfers to Oregon State. We're talking about a player too. When you talk about all of the transfers and how big the transfer portal is in modern college football, ESPN had Mensah as the number 3 overall transfer in its final transfer rating. So we're talking about a very high caliber recruit at the quarterback position. I'm excited to see him play this fall.
One note from Manny Diaz we got on Mensah and the recruiting. I think it was generally understood that Malik Murphy, left on his own to get quote unquote a bigger bag. I don't know that not to be true, but something that Manny Diaz said kind of sparked my eyebrow that made me think that maybe they didn't want him back. He said that they thought they could be more efficient passing the ball, throwing more touchdown passes. So it sounded a little bit to me, reading between the lines, that they were like, you can go ahead and leave. We think we can do better.
Wow.
And they think this Mensah guy is the guy that could take their offense to that next level.
And you might be laughing, saying, Duke football, why are you guys talking about this compared to State, Wake Forest, UNC? Duke beat all 3 a year ago. Duke beat all 3 a year ago. So we'll see. We got to get a team in the top 25 but before season's end. Going into this preseason, I want to have some more excitement. But Duke getting some votes in some of those preseason rankings. We'll see how this shakes out. Duke kicks off the season against Elon to kick off the season. Pat, you have the next pick in terms of top storylines.
All right, well, I know Wolfpack fans are already emailing me. Hey, you guys haven't still talked about NC State?
We're 10 minutes in.
I got this email. I'm not going to put the guy out there on blast about talking about Belichick. He was very upset that I called Chapel Hill the center of the college football universe. But look, it's tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of true right now, at least from an intention standpoint. But yes, NC State, the place that has the most fans in this region, a team that we obviously should respect for what they've done the last, 13 years under Dave Doeren. But my draft pick here for the number 3 overall pick is, how hot is the seat on Dave Doeren?
Oh, okay. All right. Make the case. Make the case.
Now, I like Dave Doeren, even though sometimes he feels like he doesn't like me, but that's just how he is.
Okay.
He's a prickly guy. He's got for his guys. He's a super loyal guy. I respect all those things about him.
And by far the longest tenured coach here in the state of North Carolina. If you take all of the other head coaches at the FBS level, Doeren has more experience at State than the rest of them combined. At the college level.
And that's a great point, because it leads into the hot seat. It's not that Dave Doeren is doing a bad job, but what happens when a coach stays at one school for so long, there's a complacency that starts to set in among the fan base, among the donors. And eventually you need a change in momentum. You need a spark. You need a new direction. And I always, advise against that in the way, because the grass is not always greener, as we've seen in college sports. But when you've got Bill Belichick coming in to Carolina, that changes the equation. They are making a serious investment in football. Duke is making a serious investment in football. We just heard from Boo Corrigan the other day. NC State is as well. We saw them last season, the transfer portal. They bring in a lot of high-profile names. Grayson McCall, Noah Rogers, a lot of receivers. That does not work out for a variety of reasons. It seems like this year Dave's getting a little bit more back to basics, a team that he's called more coachable, seems to fit his character more appropriately. So we're going to see if it nets out results, because just rinse and repeat, 8-4, and you beat Carolina, and not to throw the Mayo Bowl under the bus again, Like, that's not going to be good enough for Wolfpack fans. Like, everybody now is poisoned by the college football playoff. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants a taste. It's expanded now. NC State fans feel, and as they rightly should, like they should be competing for it. And if they're not, we'll see how hot that seat gets.
Yeah, so in his 12 years, he's had 9 wins in 4 of the 12 years he's had here in Raleigh, but he's never eclipsed that 9-win mark. So you never get to the bottom of the barrel, but you never quite get to the elite of the elite. Now, something that will help Dave Doeren in the 2025 season, NC State doesn't play Clemson this year.
That helps.
So you get to bypass Clemson, at least during the regular season. That helps a lot. And I know Wolfpack fans will say, well, you only have to go back to 2023 and 2021. Dave Doeren is 2-9 against Clemson as the head coach of the NC State Wolfpack. Now, Doeren, you mentioned his contract situation. Under contract through 2029. At the time of this recording, his buyout would be about $15.5 million. That goes down as time goes on. But you're kind of just stuck in this middle ground where he's not bad enough to justify a firing. I don't think it's that bad. But it's also, how many times can you get 8 wins, 9 wins, and then say, again, you mentioned the college football playoff and the expansion. Just getting in on that conversation, being, say, the 12th team would be huge for this program. And again, you look at what UNC is doing, down the street with right. Belichick. There's a lot of excitement with that. So it's not to say he hasn't been successful, but it's leaving you wanting more in his 12 years so far. But look, he's got a quarterback coming back with C.J. Bailey, who we'll talk about. But that actually dovetails perfectly with my next pick, Pat.
Okay.
And that is your 4-game winning streak against UNC. So that's one thing that Dave Doeren's been able to hang his hat on. He's 8-4 against the Tar Heels during his tenure. But the 4-game winning streak, if that's extended again, especially now that they have Belichick, that final game of the regular season, even if the teams have seasons that go off the rails, that game will still matter to the people here in this state, especially the investment that UNC made with Belichick. So that's huge considering NC State. Dave Doeren's had the Tar Heels number for several years now.
Well, you look about what got Mac Brown fired was like he didn't beat his rivals, other than Duke, didn't beat NC State, which everyone in the trial knows is actually the more important football rivalry. And then he also would have like inexcusable no-shows. Mm-hmm. You can't have both, was kind of my argument with Mac Brown. You can have maybe one or the other, but you can't have both. Now, what Dave Doeren has had, to your point, is he's beaten his rivals, and that'll keep you around for a long time because NC State fans at the end of the season, it helps with that placement of that game. Right after Thanksgiving, everybody's watching that game versus Carolina, and no matter how the season goes, like even as bad as last season was, to go in there into Chapel Hill and to beat Carolina the way they did makes you feel pretty good. So it goes a long way, but I know Doeren has tapped into that rivalry better than anybody in the triangle. Like Mac Brown never really seemed to get it. Like Carolina, for whatever reason, downplays the rivalry with NC State, almost like, oh, we're too good for it. Like we're above it.
Not in recent history.
But not in recent history. The results don't say so. But Dave Doeren, what do you call it? There was that quote where he called those podcast, but I can't swear, so I just bleeped out myself. But you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff maybe doesn't resonate with it resonates poorly on social media. It resonates great with the players in the locker room.
Google it if you don't know what we're talking about. Google it if you don't know what we're talking about. And here's the thing. ECU sitting here and saying, wait a second.
Oh, yeah.
We just beat State in the Military Bowl, and we get a rematch of that game, opening week of the season, Carter Finley Stadium. Oh, I can't wait for that.
That's beautiful poetry and irony, Shakespearean, right? Where like, Carolina's too good for the State rivalry, but State's too good for the ECU rivalry, and they lost there. But I know Doeren's not going to overlook that one now.
Let's take a quick break.
Is it my pick?
I think it's your pick. You're up, Pat.
Well, this is where we are. We've each had 2 picks each so far. So it's pick number 5 or 4.
Who's counting?
Either way, this is the steal of the draft. Am I blowing out this mic? I don't know. This is our first podcast.
Worth it.
Jordon Hudson, we've barely mentioned her. How much of a factor is she going to play in the season? How visible is she going to be? I mean, we talk about Bill Belichick being the center of the college football universe. It was really Jordon Hudson was the center of the college football universe. And that all peaked, and we may be exhausted and bit off more than we could chew with it after that CBS interview debacle. She has not really been seen from or heard from much since. Now, I can say, I didn't tweet this out at the risk of going being more than it was, because I didn't witness it firsthand. But I was at Carolina last week for the Bill Belichick press conference, one of my colleagues over there said that he saw Jordon Hudson in the building.
Okay.
She was around.
Okay. Well,
so much for that ban for Pablo Torre. Maybe I should have tweeted that out. It's on the podcast now, so we'll get this out there.
Love it.
It's not like she disappeared off the face of the earth. It's not like she broke up. They just wisely put the focus back on football. Has kind of been the message, and that's been everything they've done publicly since. But will she be at the first game? Is she gonna make hay again? Is she gonna make headlines again in some way, fashion, or
Certainly,
form?
I think she'll be there. I think she'll be there. In what capacity? We'll see. Sidelines, box, what have you. Again, I go back to what I said off the top. If the season goes south for the Tar Heels, I think you go. That CBS This Morning interview was, maybe the moment you look back to where things went awry, or if it's something that you look back on, it was like, oh, wasn't that hilarious when that happened? That's huge. That's huge. So we'll see how all of that unfolds. That wasn't even on my board, so that is a good pick, Pat Welter.
Right? It's part of your fantasy draft. Like, you got to have your rankings, and then it's like there's always like, oh wait, there's tiers of rankings, and that Jordon Hudson was a tier of her own. And it's not to say that, like, I guess I would just say this, like what we saw out of the Jordon Hudson saga the first few months raised the alarms of like, how into this is Bill Belichick really? You know what I mean? Like, is he just having fun? Is he just like setting up his kids for success, setting up his girlfriend for success, and he's just kind of like coaching football, but he's not like he's on a retirement tour?
I think he wanted to coach because I look at all of the media he did in this gap year, if you will, not coaching the Patriots anymore. How many different shows and podcasts and programs he was on?
No, and I agree with you now. Ultimately, like what we've seen the last few months, and this is the power of good PR, is at least now I'm back in. Like, I think he is in. I think he is locked in. Some of the cracks that were showing initially with Carolina seem to be buttoned up. They've brought in a ton of players. They seem to be doing things the best that they can. Ultimately, how good Carolina is doesn't really have anything to do with Jordon Hudson. It has to do with how talented they are. They've brought in 70 new players, and as good of a coach as Bill Belichick can be, ultimately college football is about your talent level. Like Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, great coaches. Those teams have the best players. That's what it takes to win. So how you can say all you want about Bill Belichick this, Bill Belichick that, situational football, Jordon Hudson, it's about your players. I'm not sure Carolina really is talented enough to go better than around 8-4.
This is perfect for my next pick, Pat Welter.
Segue, professionals.
Quarterback battle. Gio Lopez, Max Johnson. The battle of the lefties.
Let's go. It's a lefty right here.
All right. Here's how I read this. Gio Lopez was the one who was at the ACC kickoff event. So to me, he would get first crack at it. Max Johnson working his way back from that femur injury he had in the opener a year ago. Has a lot of experience at both previous stops, LSU and Texas A&M. But Lopez, another transfer that we're talking about, I think he's going to get the first crack at it when we see the Tar Heels trot out onto the field. And it's like, how do we expect North Carolina to perform this year? I don't think we've talked nearly enough about the players on the field and who your starting quarterback is. I'd imagine it's going to be Gio Lopez. Time will tell between now and kickoff on Labor Day.
It's a similar storyline to where, like, last year I wrote a column that was like, Carolina needs Jacoby Criswell to be its starting quarterback. And that wasn't to say that, like, Jacoby Criswell was, like, this savior. It was just, like, as things were constituted after the spring, pretty clear to me and most other people like on the Carolina beat that Max Johnson nor Connor Harrell were it. Like, after having seen Drake May for a couple years, you go to that at practice.
Howell as well before Drake May. So you had a nice several year stretch of strong, I don't know, elite level, but very strong NFL quarterback level play. Yes.
And so to see that was a stark contrast, and I think everybody knew it or was talking around it. So when Jacoby Criswell came in, it's like, well, clearly the staff probably knows it too, and they need to make this work. Now, they kind of kept him as like a distant third the whole time, and then ultimately he finds his way in, and the cream rises to the crop. Some of that was obviously Max's injury. But just seeing Max in that first game, yes, he's played at LSU. Yes, he's played at Texas A&M. He's super experienced. Mac Brown seemed to really like him. Bill Belichick seems to really like him. He's the son of an NFL quarterback. All these things can be true. But prior to his injury, I don't think he really had the measurable physical skills to really be anything more than a game manager in the NFL. I mean, he's famously the son of the ultimate game manager and Brad Johnson. Nothing to take away from a Super Bowl winner. But I just don't think he's the solution. He's coming back from a horrific injury. So I think whether Gio Lopez is the guy or not, they need him to be the guy.
You will learn this about me, Pat Welter, and there's one thing I abide by, and it's follow the money. Talking about the reports of how much players are making. Gio Lopez, 2 years, $4 million with North Carolina. So again, you're paying him to sit on the sideline, and then why would you bring him to the ACC kickoff? I'd imagine he gets first crack at it. Again, if North Carolina goes off the rails, though, the freshman Bryce Baker, I know, has shown some promise. There's some intrigue there. I'd imagine they redshirt him. He could play up to 4 games and still maintain his redshirt status. Something to keep an eye on, though. But I'd imagine it's going to be Gio Lopez. If not, I would say Max Johnson and Baker would be third in line. But that's just my guess. I am not boots on the ground. But that's, looking at this from afar, how I'm reading the tea leaves with the quarterback position. Again, the most important position in all of football.
Well, and it's important to note that Gio came in after the spring, and any Tar Heel fan obviously already knows that. But that is significant. You got a guy coming in on a team full of all new players, and then your most important new player wasn't even here in the spring with the new coach that's coaching college football for the first time. That's a lot of things.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong? And by the way, he's only played in what conference is South Alabama in? Not exactly.
We're going to get IT on that.
Not exactly the biggest conference in college football. But I mean, looking at some of his clips, I like what I see. I talked to him a little bit at ACC kickoff. I was like, dude, you just seem like a gamer. And he was like, yeah, I think I like that assessment. He's like, I don't know if he's an NFL caliber quarterback, but he's very much the kind of quarterback that seems to win in college, just from what I've looked at. And clearly that South Alabama proved it to be true. We'll see if it translates to the ACC.
Let's go rapid fire. Let's go 2 more picks each, or 1 more pick each. But you're up next, Pat.
Well, I would say C.J. Bailey. I'll save that one.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to NC State, though. The defense. If NC State's going to win, C.J. Bailey's got to be good. I think he will be good. But if NC State's going to really get back to form, it starts defensively. They were not a Dave Doeren football team last year. Anybody on that team would tell you that. There was big injuries. Dave Doeren talked about kind of a coachability issue. I think, the NIL seemed to maybe kind of blister that locker room a little bit last year. And it's, from all accounts, this team is much more together, much more coachable, much more in Dave's DNA, which I already covered earlier. And I think if NC State's going to get back to form, it starts on that side of the ball.
You got a new defensive coordinator. Tony Gibson's gone. Now the head coach at Marshall. So you've got DJ Elliott, Charlton Warren as well taking over there. New offensive coordinator as well. Kurt Roper taking over as OC as well. So don't shortchange that you've had coaching turnover coming off a 6-7 season for the Wolfpack.
Yeah, and Kurt Roper, I guess it is changed, but he's also a guy that recruited C.J. Bailey, had been on the staff previously as the quarterback's coach, huge relationship with Bailey. So in a way, it's continuity in all the most important respects. But you're right, DJ Elliott's a guy that Doeren, as far as I know, has not worked with, came from the NFL, though, which is something that they like. That kind of resonates with the locker room.
I'll take Bailey in the sophomore season, and it's more so it's going to kind of be a twofold pick, is his rapport with receivers. There's a lot of returning talent on this team, but coupled with the fact that Casey Concepcion is also gone, now over at Texas A&M playing for Mike Elko, former Duke coach in College Station.
Intertwined like the Marvel universe.
Yes. But a guy I thought had played well as a freshman thrust into action because Grayson McCall had career-ending injuries. So Bailey's development, it's only the 3rd true freshman to start in program history. Wow. A guy by the name of Philip Rivers being one of the other 2, and then MJ Morris as well. So I thought Bailey played well. He's added some weight since he came in as a true freshman, but his development's going to be huge for NC State in the 2025 season.
And he's just like a bright light. He's a guy that just walks into the room, lights it up, very positive, big smile. He had that from the beginning, and then the difference this year is that maturity. You talked about the physical weight. There's just the intangible kind of weight that comes with being the guy, the force that when he walks in the room, when he steps into the huddle, and it seems like everybody respects him. And Dave Doeren has talked about too, just what just having an unquestioned leader and a returning quarterback does for an entire team. And he hasn't had that. It's been transfers the last couple of years, and neither of them has worked out, from Grayson McCall to Brennan Armstrong, and it's just derailed the entire season. So for them to come in with a guy that is the guy that I think does have NFL potential, is absolutely huge for NC State. And, they are going to like actually get in the college football playoff conversation. The defense gets them back to a baseline, and then CJ Bailey can take them over the top.
Okay. And he's got some pass catchers. Justin Jolie at the tight end position.
Yeah, no Rodgers.
So Hollywood Smothers back as a running back. So they do have some offensive talent. Pat, you've got one more pick, and I'll give you my last pick, and we'll wrap up here.
Okay. My last pick is whatever the crazy thing that's going to happen this season that we can't possibly imagine is, I want that. Like, I want
chaos. Pat Welter, agent of chaos.
Was it J.J. Jones planting the flag or stealing the flag that NC State planted on his own field, leading to a giant fight? Matt Brown. You want to see ECU and NC State throw up their dukes again like they did in the Military Bowl? I can't say yes.
Okay.
I don't want to say yes, but yes. No, but you took like the spirit of it, yes. You know what I mean?
Of what a good-natured rivalry is, and that's I'm with you in terms of that opening game of everything, as much excitement as there is in Chapel Hill. The bad blood between ECU and NC State is something absolutely I'm watching opening week of the season.
And every year here, there's something that's going to happen that we can't possibly imagine. Like Bill Belichick being the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Like there's going to be something that happens that we can't possibly imagine, that we couldn't possibly draft. I'm all in for that.
Okay.
That's why I love working here, and you know it's going to happen.
All right, Agent of Chaos. I've got an honorable mention, and I'll go to my actual pick.
Okay.
Duke cornerback Chandler Rivers might be the best pro prospect, one of the best cornerbacks in the nation. Keep an eye on him. I want to give him a shout out. Duke has a linebacker named Memorable Factor from British. And if he's watching this, we want to interview you. He also has a YouTube channel about rugby and cricket. 113,000 YouTube subscribers. Memorable Factor. He's a British linebacker on Duke. Comes from a rugby background and a rowing background. Apparently has won national medals doing this, and he just so happens to play linebacker for the Duke Blue Devils. I'm blowing your mind right now. I love this.
I did not know about this. And my first question is, as you listed all these like random like third-tier sports like rugby and what was the other one? Cricket?
His YouTube channel is about rugby and cricket.
This is analysis. A Bill Belichick guy. This is a Bill. Does he play lacrosse? Because maybe that's why he's not on the Tar Heels. Maybe he can transfer next year.
Shout out Memorable Factor, though. That is my final pick. I was going through Duke's roster, and I was like, wait a second. It was almost like one of those things you'd see on The Onion or the old Key and Peele sketch where they're going through their backgrounds. Oh, man, shout out to Memorable Factor. And I'd love to see him get on the field. I know Duke's got a talented defense this year. But I was going through the roster. I'm like, wait a second. I had let me double check.
I got to start working on my puns now for the highlights to call him Memorable Factor.
Yeah. He's the one and only Pat Welter, Mark Bergen. We appreciate you watching here on the WRAL Daily Download and WRAL Triangle and 2. We'll have plenty of analysis all season long. Football is almost here. Pat, thank you so much for your time today.
Let's draft. Here we go. Fantasy football is back. And so is college.
So long, everybody.